Hello, everybody. I'm Yashvendra, and I welcome you all to this panel discussion on reshaping the world with chatbots and robotics. There is no dearth of chatbots when it comes to the BFSI industry. More and more organizations in this vertical are leveraging chatbot solutions, reducing costs and serving increasingly tech savvy consumers. Most basic tasks such as balance inquiry, bank account details, loan queries, etc., can be handled by a bot efficiently, allowing customer service representatives time for complex issues, leading to a more positive banking experience. In many instances, chatbots are developed to facilitate two-way communication, replacing channels such as phone, email, or text. The objective is to provide quick service and transactional support. Keeping chatbots as a base, how can robotics play a role in creating a stellar customer experience? Our August panelists, who are senior technology leaders, will discuss this and more in this session. So please allow me to welcome our panelists of the day in alphabetical order. Mr. Dheemant Thacker, Head Digital Banking, Ujjivan Small Finance Bank, Mr. Haresh Hiranandani, SVP and Head Digital Transformation, Kotak Mahindra Bank, and Mr. Patanjali Somayaji, CTO Capital Float. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thanks.
Let me set the ball rolling with Dheemant. Dheemant, how have chatbots evolved when it comes to delivering right and accurate responses over the years? How do you see their role changing and evolving in the BFSI context?
Well, I've been experimenting with chatbots and AI since the advent in the Indian BFSI space. And I've seen chatbots specifically evolve from structured responses to unstructured, from text to voice, and from single language to multilingual. This is the one-line statement which I can give. If I were to elaborate a bit further on this, I always draw an analogy of chatbots with a small baby who's just born. The first thing you teach a baby is it's A for apple and B for ball, right? And then you give some more information, and then when you ask a question, which of this is a fruit, the baby is able to answer, right? And that's exactly how chatbots function. As we feed in a lot of structured information, the bot learns itself on its own. There are various advanced self-learning algorithms, and that is when you end up asking unstructured information, and that is where you get the right response for those unstructured languages. Specifically, one of the other things which I've seen in the evolution is the evolution from text to voice, and it has actually happened in a very phenomenal way. It started with the Apple and Google of the world who launched Siri and OK Google, but in the Indian space itself, in the BFSI space, a lot of voice-based chatbots are now being used at contact centers, and I know one of the panelists will talk about it. And that is quite an interesting way where customers are now able to be serviced round the clock with a higher level of accuracy, right? And in case the chatbot fails, if at all, then a human can immediately take over, and that's quite phenomenal. It brings in a lot of cost and operational efficiencies for any organization. The other aspect also, why it is important from a single language to a multilingual interface, comes from the fact where my bank, which is Ujjivan Small Finance Bank, operates. It operates in the mass market segment. We cater to various sections of the society, and with that diversity, there is a diverse use of languages. Now, how do we use AI as a technology for these people with multiple language preferences, right? And that is where multilingual chatbots play a very important role, and it's a very high level of complexity which chatbots are now operating at. And this is the overall evolution, which, if I were to chart out, this is what it would be.
Great, wonderfully explained, Dheemant. There. Let me come to Patanjali now. Patanjali, if I'm not wrong, you're a born digital company. How do you look at chatbots, and how are you leveraging them?
Yeah, so I mean, great points that Dheemant raised in terms of the evolution, right? So, so basically the chatbots straddle a space between very non-intelligent or let me say fully manual kind of scenarios where you're doing IVR and having a call center, for example. for example. And the other end of the spectrum where you have the ability to give a full digital experience over an app or a website, right? And so the endeavor, at our end has always been to try to offer the full digital experience to the customer. And so we have, I mean, if you're aware, we have something called the Walnut app, which is one of India's largest personal finance apps, which then we leverage in the lending space also. So we'd always like to offer that, right? And then the chatbot kind of offers the spectrum of services that for the customer that is not actually on the app. So you can always offer the best experience and the best AI and the best robotics on a platform that you fully control that the customer comes to. But there is a subset of customers that you are not able to get onto the app for various reasons, right? Either they're early in the journey or for other reasons, right? And that's where we believe that the space for chatbots help. And one of the things about chatbots is to be able to leverage the platform for chatting that the customer is on, right? So in the BFSI space, there's a bunch of evolutions that are happening, but offering this experience on top of WhatsApp, for example, right? That's the kind of evolution we are seeing. The other space, I think, which is more of an evolution in the way people are thinking about chatbots in BFSI companies, right? So as an example, the earliest chatbots would be like, the customer, it would say, enter your loan number when the customer comes on the chatbot. And now the customer really doesn't know where to look for a loan number, right? Or it would use some very esoteric term like LAN ID or something, which is very native to the people in the institution, but the customer has no idea what this is, right? To now, chatbots are evolving to, okay, you've given me your phone number and your name, and I have looked up and given you an option of features that you now choose the product that you have with us from this list. Now, that is an evolution. Of course, technology has evolved to allow that, but it's an evolution in the product thinking happening in the teams that are building these chatbots. And I think that is an evolution, right? To be able to make the chatbot a first-class experience, to deeply think about it from a, how the product roadmap should be, what are the features that will make this easier for the customer. That is evolution, I think, that has happened in addition to everything that, Dheemant mentioned.
Sure. Wonderful, Patanjali. Haresh, your take on this?
Yes, while my colleagues have covered almost 70-80% of the evolution that chatbots have gone through, what I think is chatbots today have brought in this common AI layer, which can be now leveraged to go across digital channels. And what is also changing is, like what correctly Patanjali mentioned, that you can layer it over WhatsApp or any other platform that the customer chooses to use. Today, chatbots are being looked at whether you can start the journey on the chatbot and close it on the chatbot, or is it that you'll have to hand it over to a human at one point of time. So today, customers are okay to start chatting and fairly knowing that they can complete the journey on the chatbot. Previously, what used to happen is they used to get the basic details like a balance or something, but always knew they had a live agent at the back. But today, I see chatbots becoming a more AI-driven, bringing that intelligence on the platform. Now, what it also does is, because of this intelligence, you are also looking at a AR, VR, or a video as a platform, and using the same intelligence, you actually convert that into a video or a voice or a vernacular. So what today chatbots are doing, or for the last 2-3 years, 4-5 years, they are doing is they're getting the intelligence on the common AI layer, and that's evolution for us.
Sure. Building more intelligence, that's the way forward. Great, Haresh. Let me come back to Dheemant again. Dheemant, what does it take to build a robust chatbot presence on different digital channels today? Because, going omni-channel is critical for any organization. How do you do that?
I think the very first and the most important thing is to have a comprehensive AI strategy. Whether you are a bank or a NBFC, if you're operating in a very niche space or a specific space like life insurance or mutual fund or so on and so forth. And with the strategy comes the fact that you need to define first what are the tasks that the chatbot or the chat interface will perform, and on what channels will that chat interface be, right? That is the first and the most important thing. The second important thing is to then train and then pilot. Train is the first level where the actual coding and the question answer FAQ etc happens, where the accuracy of the chatbot comes out depending on the kind of platform that you've used which is your base AI platform. The third step, like I said, is the pilot, where and pilot is the most important thing as far as I know and my experience goes with regards to chatbots, because no matter what you put in terms of training, the pilot is where when you do it in a small set of your employees, you actually come to know what is the accuracy of the chatbot. While the AI partner may promise you the moon and the sun and the stars, um, when the chatbot fails, and if it fails directly for the customer, it creates a really bad experience, and not only for that channel but for the brand itself, right? So a pilot with a small set of employees is very important, which helps you improve the overall accuracy. And once the accuracy is at a certain acceptable level, I would put a very high level of around 90 to 95% at the pilot stage itself. That is when you launch and then you retrain. So these I would say are the four steps towards building a clear chatbot. One of the I would just like to not digress a bit, but just like to emphasize on the importance of choosing the right task. What happens is in many BFSI companies, and in my personal experience, we would like the chatbot to do anything and everything, but one needs to understand the limitation of the channel. Like Patanjali mentioned that the chatbots are now actually going towards WhatsApp and various other channels as well. Now you cannot expect the chatbot to help you with a very complex process of, let's say, an account opening, let that too for a current account, right? So there has to be a hand-on, hand-off. And therefore, the task which is mentioned, or task for which the AI has to be trained, has to be really specific and really accurate, and sufficient checks and balances have to be maintained while creating that entire chatbot as to what level a human will take over, at what level I will switch the interface from a chat interface to a web or a mobile experience or even a branch experience, so on and so forth. That's what I would say. Yeah.
Sure. The change of interface has to be really seamless, right, for that
Absolutely.
amazing customer experience.
Absolutely.
Great, wonderful. Patanjali, do you agree with the four steps that Dheemant just mentioned?
Yeah, pretty much. I think, I mean, I would just not really add on, but emphasize even more that the product thought behind where the chatbot is useful, what are the use cases that it can actually support, what are the limitations of the AI that is behind that chatbot needs to be well thought out. And it's not like a one size fits all or a chat fits every kind of experience solution, right? There are cases for building out full non-chat experiences, and there are cases for having a person on the phone at the other end. You have to pick and choose the right place to deploy this for it to be effective.
Sure. Haresh, your thoughts here? And how difficult is it? Does it involve a lot of capex? What kind of technology infrastructure do you need at the back end to ensure that everything is smooth and seamless?
So I think it's an evolution, and the capex investments are, basically platforms that people choose, and the level of complexity things you want to address with. But what I see, what Dheemant and Patanjali has also mentioned, is that we're okay to say sorry and not take the journey forward on the chatbot, but hand it over to the next best action for the customer. And finally, what are the customer personas have to be defined in our strategy, so that we are training them for those uh, definite experiences that we would want to give them on that platform.
So, Dheemant, how are bots being leveraged to drive up internal efficiencies? Because we've seen the role of bots in across the enterprise, across all business functions. How do you think they are being leveraged internally to drive up efficiencies in different strategic business units?
Right. So, from my experience, we've leveraged bots in two key areas. One is, often when we create a bot for the external customers, we create a equivalent bot for our internal customers as well. Specifically for the frontline staff, which is the sales channel, they have a lot of product related queries, a lot of training related requirements, and it is very difficult for you to train that sort of force in a structured manner, making them sit in a classroom or even a virtual classroom, go through a session and do a Q&A and give them scores, right? They need some information on the fly, like what is the interest rate for this sort of an FD or this duration, like a ready reckoner of sorts, right? Similarly, what is the pricing on this particular product? What is the pricing on that? So on and so forth. So employee-related bots is something where I've seen use cases being implemented, and they bring in a lot of efficiencies. HR-related use cases, and some of my previous organizations, we implemented quite a few HR-related use cases related to training, related to end-to-end recruitment. So any sort of structured recruitment which is done for, let's say, an employee which is in the contact center or in the branch or so on and so forth, which are sort of standardized questionnaire and all. AI and bots can be implemented where at least the first or even sometimes the second level of screening is done until the final interview is actually done by a human. The other aspect which I personally feel brings in the efficiencies and are really quantifiable is the robotic process automation. Um, Given this pandemic, what I have seen is the RPA journey with which we started off in Ujjivan Bank. We have a RPA strategy where about 100 plus processes are identified for automation, and about 15-20 of them are already automated. And as we go along, more of them will get automated. In this pandemic situation, when COVID 1.0 wave was there, uh, a lot of processes for which operations team needed to actually come to our office, do some recon work and so on and so forth, and they were actually putting themselves at risk by coming to office, right? During the 2.0 wave, because we automated a lot of those processes, those employees now need not come to office, right? The recon and the reporting gets done automatically, and various other efficiencies can actually be built in through robotic process automation. So these are some of the internal applications which create a huge amount of impact as far as AI and RPA are concerned.
Sure, sure. Patanjali, your thoughts here? Because, I feel if you provide the right information to your customers, you could actually impact sales, right? You could actually help in closing a sale there. Have you seen this happening in your organization or?
Let me flip the answer and talk about how we use it internally, and then go into the customer side of it, right? So a lot of use cases internally, like the ones that Dheemant outlined on, say, HR processes. We also we have found it useful for things like recon, for even monitoring of systems. So we have a lot of tech output that comes out that you can go to a Slack channel, for example, and the chat over there to find out. To do monitoring, to even do escalations for, say, system downtime, and we have built a bunch of processes around that in it. So there's the processes, the HR part, and then the tech part itself, which can be monitored across this, right? So we have leveraged a lot of those. From a customer perspective, right, we tend to think of it more in terms of how do we automate the end-to-end process, and then where does which part of AI play a role in that. So if you look at the lending process that is primarily what Capital Float does across a spectrum of consumer and business customers. We are able today, for example, on our checkout finance product, we underwrite and disburse a loan within 30 seconds. And so that is like a fully automated process, right? There is no human intervention. There is AI at various stages in that. So there is obviously a lot of automation. So things like hitting, APIs to get information from the bureau, etc. Also models that run at our backend for deducing income, deducing obligations, etc. Right? So models which run, and there's a lot of AI around actually those models, the output of those models, and there is the automation around how do we do, for example, quality checks very fast, right? Which otherwise in a traditional process would be run on the backend. At the other end of the spectrum, we also have business loans, where we would be going and doing like a personal discussion maybe in the pre-COVID era, and something like a telephonic discussion right now, which still has a physical requirement of someone going and doing it. But over there, everything that doesn't have that requirement, we make an endeavor to automate and make an endeavor to make sure. So, for example, physical documents that may be scanned and uploaded by the customer typically needed a quality check by a person. What we have done is we have taken image recognition and then built models to be able to do a high accuracy check on those documents to a level where we are about confident about 90-95% of the documents that come in, and only 5% then go into a manual queue. So that's the kind of automations that we have built. So from an automation perspective, there are many layers that we think about. One is the process automation and what can we do to in a sense, reduce the human intervention and make the process efficient. And at the second level, how can we leverage AI and the data to make the decisioning in every aspect actually, more optimal? We even use AI and automation in things like collections, right? Whether a collections agent needs to be present or can we do it over telecollections? That is something where we deploy models to figure out, AI models to figure out, right? So I think every aspect of banking, finance, insurance, all of it can be, is going to be disrupted by some form of automation or the other. And, we hope to be leaders in that, and we hope we have done the best that we can, but there is still a lot of work to be done in various parts of the process.
Sure. Just out of curiosity, what is the cap on the amount of loan that you disburse within 30 seconds?
I think
they won't be too big loans, right?
We go up to 10. We go up to 5 to 7 lakhs, but not in 30 seconds, of course. But fully automated, we go up to 10 lakhs also.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
But of course, anything above that, then it's like a little bit of human intervention today. But our aim is to be able to disburse much larger loans with data coming in, right? So we're constantly adding data sources and figuring out ways to get that. I mean, we didn't start off obviously at this amount. We started at a much lower amount. And we have been steadily growing, month on month on our intelligence and what we can do on that front.
Sure. Haresh sir, what challenges do you feel, you encounter when you talk about, having a chatbot deployed and ensuring a seamless experience?
I think the first challenge is to keep the expectations low in the organization, because it's like a baby. It's like a baby whom you want to, train, build up, and ensure that the baby is given enough food and training to come up that level. So that is the first challenge you will face internally. Secondly, the way the platforms are evolving now. Your choice of platform is very important, that it should be scalable and it should have an open API architecture, so that you can ensure that tomorrow when APIs are going to open up, your platform should be able to talk to multiple systems and ensure this. And the third is a common AI interface, which will, so that you give the same experience, whether it's on a chatbot, whether it's on your video, or whether it's vernacular. So sure. I think these are the three challenges that I see for an organization.
Right. Dheemant, any other challenge that comes to your mind besides what Haresh just talked about?
Well, with any new technology, as you adopt it, there will be challenges, and Haresh did capture everything really well. One aspect, though, which I would like to touch upon, and that is very close to my heart, and that is something which I've felt, is the people aspect. With bots and AI as a technology, when we deploy a use case or even talk about use case in the bank, be it the current bank where I work or in my previous assignments, there is always this sense that, okay, this technology is going to replace me.
Yeah.
Right. And that is something that one needs to address. And I always give this example. My first experience when I walked into a bank and I opened my account, there was a big book which was a ledger, and that is where the accounting entries were made in that cooperative bank where I had my first account. After a few years, I suddenly saw computers, and now we see various advanced technologies, right? Did the humans ever get replaced? Or did the productivity of the employees and the bank or an organization as a whole increase? It's the way we look at the technology and the way we handle the human aspect of it. With RPA and such other technologies, this is something that we need to address. For certain sections within any organization like finance, HR, operations, or so, they always see that, okay, how much cost are we going to save, how much of efficiencies are we going to increase, how many people are we going to replace and let out, right? But we need to see this human aspect in a much more responsible and a sensible manner. Tell them that this is not going to replace you. The human touch always is going to remain, especially in a BFSI sector where we all operate in. Human touch is always going to remain. These technologies are only going to help you better your communication with the humans, improve your conversation with the humans, so that just if your interaction was just to give them their latest account balance or the latest account statement, now you're going to have a conversation where, oh, you have this much money in your bank account, why don't you open a fixed deposit?
Yeah.
Right? So that evolved way of communication. So this is the human aspect, which is a key challenge, and it needs to be addressed very responsibly.
Absolutely. And employees, I feel, can always be upskilled or reskilled and put to better use in some other function. Great. Patanjali, your thoughts here?
No, I think fantastic points. But one of the things I would recommend is that any kind of such deployment has long-term impact on the stack. And I think Haresh alluded to that in terms of scalability. But I think just taking the time out to make sure that you're not thinking of your current use case and trying to choose the best toy for the current use case, but look at something that will hold you in good stead. Maybe the initial hiccups on getting that integrated are much larger, and it doesn't, it's not as simple, but you have to choose a more complex solution. But do take something that works for you as a platform in the long term, right? I would recommend that, especially in this space, because these are not things that can be ripped out and changed very easily. They become part of the fabric of automation. AI platforms become the fabric of your and the backbone of your technology stack over time.
Absolutely. Patanjali, that's a good point that you made there. Coming to Haresh again. Haresh, what's next when we speak about robotics in banking and financial services? Patanjali spoke about how they are being integrated with WhatsApp. Where do you see this trend, progressing towards?
So I think bot 1.0 was always with regards to repetitive, simple tasks and voluminous numbers and so on. Bot 2.0 strategies will be more on the unstructured data, voice, NLP, intent, and how do you actually make because now with AR VR also coming in, how will you ensure that the AR VR integrates with you as a system? And that's going to be very soon. Means once 5G is here, you'll see everything around you AR VR. So how does that integrate, and how does it help you from complete your customer journey? See, technologies can be anything, but if your bot 2.0 strategy is ensuring a seamless, frictionless customer journey, then I think you've reached.
Okay, wonderful. Dheemant?
I think with respect to artificial intelligence, the way AI will be used for data analytics and therefore service a particular need of the customer through hyper personalization or hyper localization is going to be a very important aspect in the future. It could be just for giving better offers to the customers, but also, like Patanjali spoke about, is real-time credit assessment and real-time credit processing. Those are the aspects which will really redefine the way BFSI segment performs using AI as a technology.
Sure, wonderful. Patanjali, so hyper personalization, integration with AR, VR. What next?
Yeah, so the couple of aspects, right? One is that every process in this chain is going to get disrupted, and there will be some AI coming in, whether it's automation, QC, underwriting, personalization of product offerings that you have for a customer, wealth management, for example, robo advisory is a big thing which people are working on. All of these are going to become more intelligent. What I think in the future, I think and I think technology and consumers will surprise us in the sense that the journey has always been how do we get to where the customer is, right? And why we are on WhatsApp is because customers are on WhatsApp, right? We would like them to come and chat on our platform, but they are on WhatsApp or they are on Instagram, and we need to go there, right? So I think as you can see, the way consumers interact with their phones, and if you look at short video formats, popularity of that, things catching on like a rage. I think where the customer is going to be very interesting, as our demographic of customers we try to target also is coming down from an age perspective. They are getting more savvy when 5G comes. So I think it'll be very interesting to see where the customer goes and then how we have to follow them there, right? Like chat itself is a relatively new phenomenon if you think of it, in the whole spectrum of technology. And one of the reasons why chat is very useful is people are more comfortable chatting than talking to someone, right? So it's much easier. It's a little bit async. You don't expect an immediate reply, but you don't expect a reply after one day also. So you don't expect them to immediately reply. But if your bot doesn't respond within a minute, then the customers start getting a little antsy, right? So it has its own kind of cultural and behavioral aspect around it. And I feel that the future is going to be very interesting in where the customer actually ends up being and how we can leverage it, right? Like an example of that would be like Alexa or the Google Home scenarios where you can ask for your bank account your bank balance, right? Now there is a cultural aspect. Do you want your bank balance to be broadcasted across a group of 10 people who might be there, and the security around that? So all of that, I think, is going to be interesting from the what do you build and how do you build and where do you build perspective. Because we have been, as part of this exercise so far, we have all been building a lot of plumbing and the infrastructure and architecture around how to deliver this. And it's going to be really interesting to see where we have to deliver it.
Yeah. So basically, you follow the customer wherever he goes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We've had a great discussion, gentlemen, and we are approaching the end of it. So one final question to all of you before we wrap up the session. We'll start with Haresh. Haresh, what are your plans with the robotic process automation, chatbots? Where do you see this heading in your organization?
So we have a very clear strategy of using hyper-automation platforms to weave a better customer journey. So we are very clear that the 1.0 wave was purely on basic stuff. Now we're going to weave multiple technologies to see how best experience we can give to our customers. So that's our next strategy.
Okay, wonderful. Dheemant, your future plans?
Well, with regards to RPA, we have a clear strategy to improve the accuracy and B, focus on speed, right? So we've identified various manual processes across various departments within Ujjivan Bank. And like I mentioned earlier, we have a roadmap where 100 plus processes are identified, which will be automated. The next step would be to then build in various AI related technologies in RPA. So like Patanjali mentioned about OCR and similar other technologies, which is AI plus RPA combination for as much straight through processing and digitization of processes as possible.
Sure. Patanjali, surprisingly, nobody spoke about cybersecurity because, there is a lot of dearth of skilled manpower in that area, and artificial intelligence and RPA could be, leveraged there also. But surprisingly, nobody touched on those aspects. Patanjali, your plans there?
Yeah, I mean, if you want, I could briefly touch upon that. But I mean, we do use, I wouldn't call it AI really, but more of automation on the cybersecurity piece where, a lot of the log analysis and stuff like that. We have a bunch of things working around that. I would classify it more as AI and automation. In terms of where we are going and where the direction is, like you mentioned earlier, we are digital native. I think in a sense also we are different from the other panelists in a sense that we have been building a lot of our tech from scratch rather than leveraging product platforms. We leverage a lot of open platforms. We leverage a lot of open AIs, but we have built stacks on that ourselves, basically because of how we evolve. And we have a lot of frameworks in place for doing the process automation pieces, to be doing, things like underwriting and models. And we are looking at really leveraging the next level of AI, right? And where that, an example of that would be like behavioral prediction. So for example, we have customers on a personal finance app, and to be able to predict when that person would want a loan. While we can do the loan processing today very well, automated within 30 seconds, within 2 minutes, whatever those metrics are, we are still working on models to predict when that person would take a loan, what is the most likelihood, so we can, focus our communications, marketing, and conversion efforts on a smaller set, make it more efficient, right? So prediction of those behaviors. We have a lot of other use cases which are, I would say, leveraging the data and the AI to be able to build intelligent use cases of this kind. So I would say we are all, as an industry, moving from the initial use cases to building out much more intelligent and much more in-depth kind of technologies that will service the customer.
Great, amazing session there, gentlemen. Very crisp, very insightful answers. Thank you so much. That's all we have time for. To sum up today's discussion, today, excellent customer service is the defining factor for customers choosing your service over your competitors. Being more advanced than a live chat tool, bots address your customers' queries instantly across channels. without the need for a support agent. Chatbots, owing to their benefits, have become a necessity for businesses to offer impeccable customer service. With this, we come to the end of this session. Thanks, viewers, for staying with us, and thank you, panelists, for those wonderful insights. Stay home, stay safe, and stay healthy. Thank you very much.